for our next story. Thank you for your insight. But we move on now. Diplomats from the BRICS group of emerging nations have agreed on a joint statement ahead of the upcoming Leaders Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The statement underscores the group's unity and commitment to addressing global issues despite its expanding membership. Brazilian President Lula da Silva is hosting leaders from Ethiopia, Nigeria and the UAE as part of the summit, which will focus on enhancing global South cooperation and discussing pressing geopolitical issues. Chinese Premier Li Qiang has arrived in Rio to attend the summit, while Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres are also going to be present, representing their respective nations. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also in Rio for the high-profile event. Notably missing from the summit this year are Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin. BRICS nations have voiced serious concerns over the impact of US President Donald Trump's trade tariffs, warning that unilateral measures distort global trade and hinder economic development. The group, which represents half of the world's population, continues to criticize these tariffs, saying they threaten the global economy. Additionally, at the BRICS Business Forum in Rio, Lula called for strengthening multilateral trading system. Let's take a listen in to what the Brazilian president had to say.
Diante do ressurgimento do protecionismo, cabe às nações emergentes defender o regime multilateral de comércio e reformar a arquitetura financeira internacional. Energia limpa. Ao impulsionar o uso de moedas locais, o NB também tem contribuído para reduzir custos de transação e facilitar operações financeiras. Com o objetivo de simplificar o comércio e os investimentos, os bancos centrais dos BRICS estão trabalhando para desenvolver meios de pagamento transfronteiriços, instantâneos e seguros.
In other news, Vietnam and Brazil are celebrating the first ever exchange of Brazilian beef and Vietnamese tilapia, marking a significant milestone in bilateral trade. The countries have also signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen cooperation in science, technology, innovation and digital transformation. The BRICS summit in Rio promises to be a pivotal moment for the Global South as nations push for reforms in global governance and more equitable trade practices. We're once again joined by Ambassador Goel. How significant is this BRICS summit for the Global South, especially with these new members of Nigeria, the UAE, also Ethiopia as well, Ambassador Goel? What are your thoughts?
Very significant meeting from the point of view of a Global South. In fact, I think as we progress further in time, I find that the global attention to the problems of the South, so to say, both in terms of financial transfers, in terms of market access, and in terms of development of their own production capacities, has been completely forgotten, really, if I can say in those very stark terms, really. This BRICS summit is important and could have produced a very significant outcome, but for the fact that both Russia and China, Russia more importantly, has decided to stay away from the summit completely, while China has participated at the level of the Prime Minister, Li Keqiang, who obviously will be contributing tremendously to the outcomes. But the way I look at BRICS really is that the problems it faces are insurmountable. One is the global trade regime. Trump tariff threats seem to have completely put a short end to the global trade as we have known before. Number two, Russia, which is actually the pivot to the European energy security metrics. Sanctions against Russia, again, seem to be really, and if Trump really implements a threat of 500% tariff on those trading with Russia, is going to be horrible, really, for most of the countries. And then you have the issues like Iran, the issues in the Middle East. So on the whole, BRICS, which actually, and de-dollarization, China is going to use the platform of BRICS for its own bilateral advantages in terms of the global trade system. So in short, while the BRICS could prove to be very useful, but I think this year has introduced certain variables which make me a bit pessimistic about any significant outcome for this year. Thomas.
Yes, Ambassador Goel, thank you very much for joining us on the programme and for your insight. We now move to the Middle East.